Engineer versus Designer is brought to you by the Mojo 3D printer. Now you can have 3D printing right at your desktop at a remarkably low cost. With the magic of Mojo, there's really no limit to your creativity. See it at mojo3dprinting.com.
Adam, if design were a mechanically altered, fur-covered beast with flaring jaw muscles, you would be riding atop it with a broadsword and a Sharpie.
Welcome to Engineer vs. Designer,
The podcast.
for product designers,
Engineers,
big people,
little people,
and those who defy all odds to become a leader in the engineering and design community.
Yep.
My name is Adam.
And my name is Josh. Adam, can I sum up this week's interview in one word?
That would be hard to do, but I would like to see you try to do that.
Goosebumps. Yeah, all over.
That's a pretty good one. You
Yep.
got me there.
This week we have a great honor to speak with Ping Fu, CEO of Geomagic. Geomagic creates software to help create digital models, but there's so much more. Recently acquiring a company that creates 3D modeling software and haptic devices. We'll talk to her about that and so much more.
Well, actually, Josh, I talked to her about that. Josh was jet-setting about the States. I think he was on a competitive hamburger eating competition or something like that.
Burgers won't eat themselves, but I will.
That's really cool, Josh. And you know what else is cool? It's also leaving me to do your job while you go eat burgers.
And I absolutely love that you started off with the robotic praying mantis question. Yeah.
That was good. Roll it. Well, Ping Fu, if you had a choice between scanning a praying mantis and roboticizing it and flying it into space, would you do that or fashion a stylish pair of stilettos to be 3D printed?
I would definitely scanning a mantis and roboticize it. I love mantis, I love the robots, and I always wanted to be an astronaut.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. Now, I think a lot of people that listen to this show are going to be familiar with Geomagic. It has a lot to do with reverse engineering, working with scanned data, but from fashion products to the car fenders, Geomagic is a lot more than that, though. What can you just give me the elevator pitch of what is Geomagic and what's it capable of?
Well, I think of a Geomagic as Adobe in 3D. You know, if you describe CAD as design digitally and then go to real world, make product, Geomagic start in real world and real people, and create a design from that. Of course, we do more than design, so you can think of as design from scan data, we inspect from scan data, we simulate from scan data, we sculpt from scan data. To use metaphors, if I would say CAD is database, which means you have the knowledge and you put it into the software and you use that knowledge, then Geomagic is data mining. We capture the real world and real people. We do analysis of that data, and we create useful information and hand it to design engineers.
All right, so recently, Sensible, they make haptic devices that work back and forth with 3D software for sculpting. That was acquired by Geomagic, and it makes sense that you're working with 3D data, but it would seem like Geomagic might acquire, say, a scanning company rather than a haptic device. What's the logic behind this purchase?
Well, that's a very good question. There are two part of the answer to that question. The first one is, why didn't we buy a scanning device? And the reason is Geomagic software works with all scanning devices. So any scanning hardware company are our partner. Right? It can go from very low end, like Microsoft, to connect to very high end, to medical CT and MR. In the middle, you got all these industrial terrestrial scanners. We couldn't possibly buy one scanner and cover the market. We really want to be the software that takes any scanning input and then process them and then multiplex them to any other outputs. Could be machines, could be CAD/CAM, CAE. So we think of ourselves as a multiplexer sitting in between scanning devices and output to hardware and software.
Right.
So buying one scanner just wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
You know, we don't want to compete with our partner, and one scanner wouldn't solve the problem.
Right.
So let me turn the second part of the answer on why do we buy Sensible. Sensible haptic device just happened to be part of their business. What I was really interested is this technology that simulates our human physical reality in a digital environment. That's what we always have done in terms of visual capture. We capture real world and real people and create digital models. I was just looking at, the recent development of a 3D design engineering environment and say, what's missing in the digital environment? We've done a lot of things in visual side. We've done a lot of things with tracking, but there's no touch. So if touch is a fundamental, physical reality that we live in, missing that in the digital environment seems to be very crippling.
Right.
Now, Sensible has that, and of course they were way early in their time in having that technology. They were visionary. They got great technology, well protected, but they were too early. And now you look at current market conditions, 3D TV, 3D display is readily available. 3D tracker like Kinect-like tracking or any kind of motion tracker is readily available. So I can envision that you could stand in your living room with the haptic device on your hand, and your finger is the stylus rather than an external device. So when you start to rotating and touching 3D object, you can feel it rather than your hand just go through it. Right?
Really bridging that gap between physical and digital interaction.
Absolutely, because that's what we do. The space that we're working, I call it digital reality, kind of like a digital economy, right? We know digital economy is going to take over physical economy in 5 years in terms of amount of money we pay. So digital reality is about that we're simulating anything in reality in a digital environment.
Right.
And what we originally do is to capture our real environment and put it into digital environment. And now that there's so much simulation that's possible, and I find touch to be a fantastic
absolutely
and physical reality that we need.
Right.
In digital environment.
And I would say, one thing that's interesting about what you're saying, beyond just interacting with digital data in a different way, is that you're hopefully adding a method of synchronous sort of interaction with the data, where instead of having to capture a moment in time and then process that, you're dealing with real-time data, input and output, both directions. So we've seen glimpses of Geomagic using things like the Microsoft Kinect for real-time scanning. What can you tell us about the possibilities of future scan technology and obviously you're lacking some accuracy at this point with real-time scanning, but, in the long term, that'll go away. Where do you see this leading to? You've already alluded to some of that.
Interestingly, that there are many people use Microsoft Kinect, including Microsoft itself, using it for scanning, because when you look at the Kinect machine, what they have in that Kinect machine is exactly what you need for scanning. So it was natural for anybody in scanning field to see that. Yes, it currently does not have the kind of accuracy, but it's already kind of good enough to be a reference model.
Right.
So say if you have somebody use Kinect to generate a crude model, okay, it's not good enough. They can send it to Sensible freeform software and detail it. Right. So you instead of you sculpt from scratch, you could sculpt from something that's almost there. Then you extend the number of people who could do that, because not everybody can sculpt.
I mean, the possibilities are really amazing. So can you think of what's a personal favorite application that you've seen Geomagic used for, or that you would like to see Geomagic used for? Well,
Geomagic, I think the favorite thing that I've seen today, Geomagic are used for is this very automated process from 3D imaging through our software to 3D printing in a way that's so much easier than it was ever before.
So taking an object and scanning it and then being able to almost immediately 3D print some copy of that object. That's what you mean.
It's actually, it is immediate. We demonstrated in Euromode and CES. At that time, it wasn't as good of a quality yet, but we're just trying to demonstrate a point. So 3D System went to buy a Connect, put it on their booth. We don't even develop scanner, and we just wrote a script, completely automated script.
Wow. Where
somebody comes to the booth, it scans your head, and it gets automatically piped to the 24 3D printers sitting there. No human intervention, right? You just walk by, and then it gets printed, and you come back and you just pick it up. They print 2 of them. One, they put it on a wall as a 3D, kind of like 3D signature. Another one you take away. Granted, at that time, we just wrote a script. Nothing's optimized. The shapes are not as high quality as we would like to see. But even today, I can see the quality is already pretty much acceptable. I have a high school intern here taking a Connect and going after every one of my employees.
Wow.
Scan their head, and then made a foosball table. You have all this little thing. And it takes him 3 minutes.
Amazing.
Per design.
It's like you've built a 3-dimensional Xerox machine. You've built the ability to copy 3-dimensional things.
Absolutely. And then you can have a 3D Xerox machine immediately, and then with some design software, you can even do it more than Xerox, right? You can do mashups. Like with the foosball. Literally, we just mash up people's head with the mechanical design of the foosball piece that we scanned, and then we make that piece as a standard.
So are you going to commercialize that as a service? Because I can think of a lot of offices that would like a foosball table with their employees' heads on the players.
That could be very interesting. We'll probably give it away and just let people play it have fun with it. It really generates a lot of interesting. What I really find it interesting with this is I can envision in the distance the future that every CAD/CAM designers could have a Connect-like device, which is cheap, readily available, off the shelf. You don't have to go to special vendors, and you can start to scanning.
That's fantastic. I mean, I already want to scan Josh's head and put him on a Barbie and Ken doll. Just so his little girl can play with him in the dollhouse. Yeah.
We actually, talking about that, I've seen people putting the guy's head on a woman's body and things like that. People just start going crazy with what you can do by meshing up.
Wow, it's like you're a mad scientist. Well, so let's switch gears a little bit. Now, you personally, Ping Fu, have a pretty intense and interesting history. You were taken from your aunt and uncle, as I understand, imprisoned by the Chinese government for things that you wrote, and then lots of events that went into motion for you and others. We could talk the whole show about these times and not fully understand the depth and the breadth of what you've been through. But what's brought you through all of these life challenges, and how did that lead to where you are?
That's a good question. Fortunately, I am writing a book, and the book is going to come out in January.
Oh, wow.
So that would have my whole story, so we don't have to talk about it on the show.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay.
Through writing that book, I kind of looked back into my life and thought about this kind of question is, what drives me? Why? How did I get here? And one of the things that I realized was when I was young, it was beaten into my head that I was nobody. I was worse than a bug beneath the other people's feet. So I had no right. But inside of me, I didn't believe that, right? So I wanted to be somebody, although it wasn't specific what I want to be. So this being forced to admit that or accept that you're nobody, but in your heart you don't believe it, that was my drive. The drive of being somebody. And not knowing who I want to be also allowed me to be very flexible, like going everywhere. And that's the good part. And then not so good part is I don't know when to stop. It's not like somebody grow up and think, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be something. When you get there, you kind of say, I achieved. I didn't know what achievement was. And I didn't even know that was my drive. I just want to be somebody. So I never stopped pushing, learning. doing.
That's amazing. And what you ended up becoming a computer scientist, computer programmer, and essentially created Geomagic out of nowhere. What was your original, like, where did you get this vision from? Where did you get this idea for Geomagic, and how did that,
Right.
how did this come out of your life?
So when I started Geomagic, I just came off the fantastic success of starting Mosaic, managing that, and that became Netscape, and Netscape went public. That was the background when university pushed me to start a business. Yamaga and Jason was my student, and then I did not know what start business meant. And when I agreed to start a business, I thought about what I wanted to do, and then I happened to running into Chuck Hall demonstrating stereolithography machine. So I thought, wow, that's what I wanted to do. Of course, they didn't hire me, and I wanted to start a business. I didn't know much about it. Then I did a little bit market research, and I found that there was 200 scanners, all little companies, like 2 or 3 people out there. And I thought exactly like what you earlier said, 3D fax machine. I thought, wow, if I could put 3D imaging and 3D printing, at that time I already think of it as a 3D printing rather than SLA, then I would have a 3D fax machine. I literally went out raise money by saying, imagine you have a microwave oven like a machine with a turntable. You put an object in there, you push a button, the object gets scanned, you dial a number, which is a phone number. It gets sent to the other side, and they have a microwave oven like a machine. They push a button, it gets printed. So,
and I'm sorry, what year is this?
That was 1997.
Wow.
I said, literally, you have a 3D fax machine. That's how I was trying to raise money. Take it back to, like, how did I come up with? Then I thought about, what kind of application would it be? I thought it was personal secretary. And I thought, well, back then, people didn't think PC would be in everybody's home. I bet personal secretary is a whole lot more intuitive than personal computer to be at home. That was kind of my line of thinking. And at that time, nobody really is talking about this. I was just dreaming about it. And I thought about where this popped into my mind. Interestingly, when I grew up, because Cultural Revolution, I didn't go to school, I was working in the factory. So I did a lot of maker-like work. I assembled the radio, I fixed light, I did milling machine, not NC controlled. So I've done a lot of factory work. That's kind of in back of my mind. So this was very natural to me.
Right.
But I only recognized that when I was writing the book. I said, where did this come from? It just doesn't.
Amazing. And
like an internet high. Why would I think about personal secretary?
Right. I mean, and you've gone through, all of this that's going to be in your book. I can't wait to read it. But I mean, what piece of advice would you have for your 16-year-old self now? What would you say to yourself if you could?
Well, I do have an 18-year-old daughter, and my advice to her is you don't need to know everything. You just need to have curiosity, right? And in our house, there's only one rule, which is you don't ask for permissions, but you're responsible for your own thoughts and actions.
Wow. That's a really brave stance to take as a parent, and I think that's really interesting.
It's actually very interesting when they realize they are responsible for their actions, how much more responsible they are.
So I actually was talking to my wife. I told her that I was going to be interviewing you, and she read an article about you that I sent her, and she said the most interesting sentence you'd written was that when we identify some very large problems, we seem to think technical people can solve them. In reality, those problems are a lot of times human problems or organizational behavior problems.
Right.
And so when starting or running a business, it's often necessary to learn new skills rapidly and work with a lot of different people. Can you talk about a time when you had to learn something new and how you went about doing it, and how does that play into organizational and behavioral problems, as you call them?
Right. So, well, I I always have to learn because starting a business was something new. I'm just not afraid of learning because self-learning is one of my strengths. But let me talk about human behavior issues. So when Geomagic grew to about 60 people, I realized that I didn't know how to manage people because every people problem comes out in every form by that size. When you're a very small company, people are like you. You think same. You finish each other's sentences. They all seem like get along. And when it gets a little bit bigger, it's just not the case anymore. So I thought the way to learn that was to understand myself more. So I started learning psychology, and I didn't find that helpful. Then I started learning organizational behavior, which is more of how to lead other people. Then I realized, leadership is not about leaders. Without followers, there's no leader. So leadership is like a friendship. It's about relationship, and it's about trust, and it's about bond, right? Just like friendship.
Right.
A lot of time we talk about leadership as if it's just the individual, that leader. In fact, that's not the case. So that's when I start to realize that a lot of those issues are more human behavior, organizational behavior issues, not a single person issue. When you focus on single person issue, you tend to focus on the wrong issue. And if people are different, it's great for the company. You want people to be different because you have different point of view, you have different skill set. You can work on your strengths rather than your weakness. Anything you don't like to do, just get somebody else who's great at it to do it. But to create a culture like that, to create a culture where everybody understands that, people don't demand other people think and behave like who they are, it's a pretty long learning process, not just by me, but by the entire organization. So this whole culture of health, a healthy organization often is more effective than a strategic organization.
Well, I think it's such a beautiful and important picture to know that someone that's as successful as you have been, frankly, has been able to recognize, to be introspective enough to recognize things that you didn't know how to do, and then to seek ways of learning how to do those things and how to deal with, as you say, managing people and managing organizational behavior as opposed to individual behavior. It's really insightful and impressive. I mean, and you've received a lot of awards as well, quite a lot of them. Do these feel like distractions to you, or do they motivate you? Do you get anything out of them?
I would say the motivation is only 5 minutes. Like a really short thing, and then it's not as much of a distraction, other than sometimes it's an obligation. If people give you that honor comes with responsibility and obligation, right? Because you inevitably you be put in the position to be a role model,
right.
And people would want to learn things from you. So it does come with certain public service obligations. At early stage, there was a bit of distraction in the sense of I recognize how easy we can be spoiled. Because when I got an Inc. Entrepreneur of the Year award, which is a national award, that's huge. And I got so many invitations. People treated me so well. They fly me first class. They put me in great hotel. They send me masseuse into my room. And in like half a year, I get this incredible treatment from people who invite me to give talks. I suddenly realized I was impatient when I was waiting in line in a, coach class. Because you generally apply coach class. And I was flying with my daughter. I got incredibly impatient, and my daughter said, "Mom, who do you think you are? Why do you think you need to have more privilege than anybody else?" And that hit me like a brick, right? And I thought, wow, it's so easy to be spoiled. And that's when I brought myself back to earth. And so nowadays, if I get awards or whatever I constantly remind myself I am who I am. Just
What an amazing
because I get
story.
an award doesn't change me, but what it does add is public responsibility.
That's so
when people
so
honor you.
inspiring. So if you could give an award to someone today, who would you give the award to and why?
I'll give it to Michelle Obama.
Yeah? What would you give her an award for?
I'll give her the award for the best first lady.
Fantastic. Well, Ping Fu, what one last question. What advice would you pass on to young ladies in particular, but also just young people in general? What advice would you have for them facing unforeseen difficulties and circumstances in their lives?
I think everyone will face difficulty in their life in any stage of your life, and it doesn't really matter you are extremely privileged or you're extremely poor. You have different challenges. But I would say I would focus on the positive side, because this young generation is in the most exciting time in the human history. I say that namely that we human have been able to extend our physical self by building tools for millennia. Okay, we built, our fingers not strong, so we built stone tools many thousands, 10,000s of years ago, and we can't fly. We built airplanes. We can't remember numbers. We built spreadsheets. But it is within the last 20 years, it's the first time we humans can extend our mental self. In millennia, our human advance is limited by our mental self, not physical self. So the computer comes in to be able to help us to think that much better, which means this generation will be able to solve the kind of problem we could never imagine before.
Wow.
So they are living in such an interesting time. To me, that's so exciting, but I'm sad that I'm already too old for that. I'm still doing it, but it's really not my thing anymore. It's their thing. So the young kids like to talk to me about singularities, with the machine coming to kill humans. And I'm like, guys, you're living in an era that is so interesting that you would be able to, maybe cancer would not be a problem anymore. Maybe all medicine would be individualized. Maybe we wouldn't have scarcity. We would have abundance. We never have a possibility of hundreds of millions of people being able to contribute to a single idea, right? So think about abundance rather than scarcity. And that would be my advice to the young people. I get goosebumps to think about what they have as a tool in their hand.
Well, Ping Fu, you have certainly given me goosebumps. Thank you so much for your time and for such an inspirational story. I can't wait to read your book. And thank you.
Okay, thank you.
See? Goosebumps. You even said it.
It blew my mind. Abundance rather than scarcity. That's what it's all about.
Yep. Not machines coming to kill humans.
Folks, be sure to check out Ping Fu's book, which will be coming out in January 2013, all over the place.
Yep, really an inspiring story.
Seriously. Wow. No kidding. And if you would like to send giant baskets of oatmeal to EVD HQ, please address that to Adam.
If you'd like to send human-killing machines to EVD, please address that to Adam as well.
Yes.
Let us know what you think about the show, what sound effects or guests you'd like to hear. Leave sarcastic, comical, or otherwise nitpicky comments at EngineerVsDesigner.com. Do it now.
Also, we enjoy spending hours looking through your social profiles to see what you ate over the weekend. So, be sure to like us, plus want us, tweet us, or whatever else so we can share that with our fans.
We'll do it. The show is edited by Simon Martin. Our theme music is by Ross Hartman.
We'll see you next week. And remember, crushing red pepper, inserting it into one nostril, and blowing it out the other over the cubicle wall did not used to be acceptable until I did it.
Sage advice.
I'm here to help.
Look out! Engineer vs. Designer is brought to you by Mojo 3D Printer, a world-class professional 3D printer for only $185 a month. To find out how you can give your big idea a little mojo, visit mojo3dprinting.com.
A production of EVD Media.